Hi, everyone. Welcome. Nice to be here with you today. We are just waiting for our numbers to go up a bit in our attendance. Hope everyone's having a good start to 2024. We're already 10 days in. At some point, we'll start or we'll stop wishing each other a Happy New Year. But since this is our first webinar together, Happy New Year and welcome to everyone.
Also stop doing 2023 when I'm doing the date.
Right.
Hopefully
Yeah, at some point that stops too.
Yeah.
So on the screen here today, you'll see Mel Matheson. She is our home support and education manager. We have Stephen Wenzowski, who is a resident expert advisor and leader with OARC. He's also someone who lives in long-term care in Hamilton. So welcome, Stephen. And myself, Stephanie, the Director of Education with OARC. Behind the scenes, we have Jennifer Langston, our Operations and Project Manager, and Melissa McPhee, our Director of Communications. Melissa and Jen will be monitoring our question and answer box and answering some of the questions as they come in. But just like last time, we wanted to let you know that we will keep an eye on the question and answer box throughout the duration of this webinar. So if you have any questions that come up as we're talking about a topic, please pop them in there at any time. We'll do our best to answer them as we go through the webinar. And if you have any questions specifically for Stephen, you'd like to hear Stephen's take on something, just make note of that in the question as well. You can say this one's for Stephen or Rogue One, as he likes to be known as.
Don't forget disclaimer there, Stephanie.
Say again?
Don't forget your disclaimer.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you wanted me to share that. I joked with Stephen that we would start these engagements by saying that Stephen operates on his own. His comments are his, views and opinions are his and may not necessarily reflect those of OARC, although most of the time they do. So there's that. Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to say our land acknowledgement today. So together, let us now pause as we acknowledge the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. From wherever we are virtually participating in today's meeting, let us take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the land we each call home. We do this to affirm our commitment and responsibility to improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. We acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people who call this nation home. Let us now join in a moment of reflection to acknowledge the harms and the mistakes of the past and to consider how each of us, in our own way, can move forward in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration.
Thank you, Mel. Okay, so we touched on this a little bit on our first slide. You'll notice that the chat feature, the chat box, is disabled for this session. What we do have is the question and answer box, which we will be looking at throughout the presentation and sharing your comments as they come in. Last webinar that we had where we discussed the agenda, you provided so many great examples of how you do things in your homes, which were really valuable to us and to those who were participating in the webinar. So keep them coming. We might not be able to share every example, but we do appreciate receiving those. So thank you for that. As always, the webinar will be recorded and will be made available on our website along with the slides, and will be sent to people who are registered for this webinar after it's completed. And there's also an opportunity for you to provide your feedback and comments on what you saw today, what you'd like to see, what you thought of our presentation for you today. And we do always appreciate seeing those and take your advice from them and incorporate them into future webinars. So please take a moment to fill in the evaluation after the webinar.
So our time together today, last month in December, we went over our provisional agenda template, and we were going to do our minute template on that day too, but it got to be, all the questions were great and we had so much information just with our provisional that we've decided to do the minute template today. And then our next series in the spring will be understanding our law guide. But on our website is part 1, and today we are doing part 2, talking about the minute template. Our template does connect to the agenda. So if you have worked through the agenda, now we're working through the minute template that is connected to that.
Thank you, Mel. Okay, so we're going to switch screens now for a second and head on over to the minute template. But actually, before we do that, I just want to refresh everyone's memory. This was the document that we worked through together last time, the provisional agenda. So in this document here, you see that each numbered section will correspond to a section on the minute template that we're going to look at in just a moment. We went through all of these different sections last time and provided examples how you could customize them for your own home, and we're able to answer a lot of the questions, and as I mentioned, share how you do things in your home. So we got lots of great feedback from the last webinar, and hope that this one is just as valuable for you. Okay. So just another reminder before we go on to the minute template is that each one of these sections, in addition to linking back to the minute template, it also covers a lot of what is in the legislation. What are what's in the law, the requirements for residence council, the powers of residence council. So we do encourage you to keep this intact. You may not need to cover, or you may not have time to cover, or your council may not have the desire to cover each one of these things all the time, but it's good to keep this intact so that you're at least aware of what you're entitled to cover as a residence council, where you can have influence as a residence council. Okay, so without any further delay, here is the minute template, and this can be found on our website. It's updated there. If you have trouble locating it, you can always reach out to us, and we'll help you find it, and it will be sent out with the recording of this webinar as well. So you'll be able to find it there. It's a Word document. It's available in English and French in a couple of different font sizes. And over to you, Mel.
All right. So yeah, as Stephanie said, you can find it online, and it's in Word, and it's all you can populate it right from there. You can adjust it, you can change things around, and you can really customize it to what you need and what your home's needing. So we're going to go through, just highlight some of it and then go in depth with some things. So on page 1, it just has a spot where you can put your home, the date of the meeting, the time the meeting started, and residents in attendance. We do suggest to keep people's privacy and maybe not putting people's full names, but maybe initials or first names only without the last names, or just, however your council would like it to be done. But we do recommend just initials. And then approved guests. So in the meeting beforehand, you should have provided a opportunity for your council to know that you're going to have a guest in the next meeting, and for them to vote on it so that these people are approved to come to your meeting. Or if they have been approved at the beginning of the year, you've done approval for whoever you would like to come to the meetings and the dates. And this is just where you would have who is approved of the guests that would be able to come to your meeting. And then your resident council assistant, the name and who was there to provide assistance. So that's page 1.
Okay, and we are keeping an eye on the Q&A box just in case anything comes in there. And you can customize this page. So if you'd like to put, residence council at Queen's Garden or residence council at the name of your home, you can update this. This is just a Word document, so you can change anything that to make it customizable for
Stephen's
yourself.
going to show you his. Stephen, if you move it over to
great.
the right a little bit. Oh, and down. We can't see the name.
To your left. Yes, a little bit more. Okay. Okay, so it looks like you have yours on one page, or perhaps that's your
That's back.
Double-sided.
okay. Thanks for sharing. Okay, so we'll move on to page 2. So here's the call to order and adoption of agenda. So you see there's lots of spots here for participation, and the minute template encourages, the goal of it is to encourage resident involvement and resident participation too. So you don't only have to have one person doing all of these things that are on the agenda. You can divide and share the responsibilities amongst members who are interested in doing these things. So someone can do the call of order, get the time. You can have another person reading the opening guidelines. We have samples of opening guidelines on our website. Some homes will do a land acknowledgement as well. Some will do a gratitude circle or a prayer, depending on the needs of the home. Review and adoption of agenda, exactly what it says. You go over your agenda and everyone knows what's coming up, what to expect. And again, a motion accepted by. So if everything looks good on the agenda, then someone accepts the agenda and you move on. The previously approved minutes. So these minutes have already been approved by someone on the council. It could be a residence council subcommittee. Maybe it's the leadership team of the residence council. Maybe it's one person on the council. But the point is that the minutes from the previous meeting will have already been approved. So 1.1 is an opportunity to read out some highlights to jog people's memories. So if anyone missed the previous meeting, they're up to date or up to speed with what's happening, and they know based on the previous minute. So you don't have to read the whole thing again. I think Stephen has shared that he does something. How do you do your review of the previous minutes, Stephen?
What we do is the previously approved minutes are provided to the council. They're allowed to read it 10 minutes or 15 minutes before the council meeting, and that way we save ourselves 30 to 40 minutes reading the entire list.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, that's going through the whole thing again. That could be a second meeting altogether. So that's a good idea to. You could even do that as people are entering the room or gathering. Some councils will have light refreshments before the meeting. So you could even do it then. So thanks for sharing that, Stephen.
I know some homes that I've been at, when in their council meetings, they just do highlights as well. So they'll just pull out different highlights from the last meeting.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you. And then business arising from previous minutes. This is a spot here to capture anything that you might have missed from the previous meeting because you ran out of time, or anything that was needed further discussion at the last meeting that you couldn't get to. You can just add a quick note there that you will be discussing that, but it was carried over from the previous meeting. This is a very formal page. There's nothing that says that you have to follow this exactly. We just find that this process helps to keep things neat and organized. But there's nothing saying that you have to follow exactly everything that's on here. Okay, we do have a question about using full names. The question is asking if it's not allowed to use full names of residents. And there's nothing that says that you can't use full names. We just have received feedback from councils and from residents and even from some homes that felt that because the minutes are required to be posted with resident approval, it's in the best interest of people to not have their full names on the minutes, because anybody entering the home, the minutes have to be posted. Anyone entering the home could look at them. In some homes, people are okay with this. In others, they prefer to have just their initials or one initial, or it could even be, you know, the home area that they're representing from. So it's something to discuss with the residents who attend the meetings. And you could even bring it if you have a privacy officer in your home, or if you have an ethics committee, you could bring it up there, just so you could have that discussion and see what the preferences are of the residents in your home. Sometimes we hear that we hear from a council assistant or from a family member or an administrator that their residence council does not want their minutes posted. And so when we dig deeper, most of the time we find that it's because their full names are listed in it. So it eliminates one of those barriers to having the minutes posted and shared freely. Okay, we'll go to the next. Oh, Stephen?
And what the previously approved minutes, what we do here at Queens is it's typed up, presented to the chairman and to the administrator, and we both sign it. So it's on the back of the sheet for the next meeting.
Thank you. That's thanks for sharing that. We have just going back to the Q&A, we have Melanie who has shared that at their home they use first name and last initial. Thank you for sharing that. We have another person who has suggested that perhaps there could be 2 attendance lists, and on the one that's posted, it just has the number of residents who attended, or even the home areas that were represented, the number of people from each home area, and then there's an internal list that has names. So thank you for that. That's a great suggestion as well. We also have a question from Lisa, who's asking about getting minutes approved. So we are going to talk about this later on in the presentation. So I'll hold off on your question, but we do see it. So thank you for asking that. Okay, on to page 3.
So 2.0 is regular business. So this is things that are done at every meeting. And through this, we're going to go quickly through this, and then we'll come back to 2.1 and 2.5 to really dive deep into how to effectively use this with your concern forms and tying it with the responses that you get from your administrator. So just the review, 2.1 is review of responses to concerns. So the administrator is required by the legislation to respond to residents' council's concerns within 10 calendar days. It's not business days, but it's calendar days. So this is where that issue would be, or concern would be written out, and the documentation, has it been received with the response, the date that the response was given, the action taken, and approval from council, and the resolution. Was there yes, no, or is it ongoing? So this we're going to talk in a little bit more depth with that part of it. So I'm going to move on to 2.2 right now, and that's resident Bill of Rights review. So prior to each residence council, with the agenda, you can discuss how you want your resident rights to be reviewed. Some homes do two resident rights that they talk about, and they explain what it means in the home. Stephen, do you want to share how you guys do yours?
We do 3 rights per meeting, and we read it right from the Clio book.
So that's a great resource to have. If you don't have the Clio book, you can actually order those online for free. And the Clio book explains the legislation, the Bill of Rights, and then it gives it in layman's terms of what it means for you in a practical way.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to the next page. And some homes, Mel and I have visited some homes where the residents council chooses not to discuss the Bill of Rights during the meetings. They have it as a separate program, and then someone reports back if there was any discussion that that was really interesting or any commentary. They'll have it as a separate thing, a resident rights discussion group.
Yeah,
but.
And Steph, there's a question here, is the Clio book up to date? And yes, it is. As of last year, they did update it, so you can order those online. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so just back on the Resident Bill of Rights, it is one of the duties and responsibilities of the Residents Council, in addition to the home's responsibility, to help residents know and understand their rights, the Resident Bill of Rights. So that's why it's included on our agenda template and on our meeting minutes template. It's super important.
And you can get those Clio books. It's not on our website. It is actually on, oh gosh, the name just slipped my mind. We will put a link in in the email so that you can actually order it right through the link. But my mind just went blank.
Yeah, it is on the Clio website, so the Community Legal Education Ontario website. They have all of the books there, and I do think that we do have a link on our website under resources, but we'll send it out with the recording of this webinar so you can have that all in one place. Thank you for the questions. Okay, so Treasurer's Report. As you know, the Residents Council have the right to raise funds and to plan and sponsor activities. And in order to do that, they need to have access to their funds. So we know that different homes do this differently. Some homes, if they have a board of directors and oh my goodness, the words escape me, but if they have a board of directors and a fund, sometimes the board will allocate an amount for Residents Council as a line item in their budget. Other homes will do, the Residents Council does their own fundraising, and then they're in control of what they raise. Other homes, the proceeds from the tuck shop go to Residents Council. So there's a lot of different ways that homes are managing this, and the legislation doesn't have one specific way of legislating how this happens. So it varies, but what's important is that any funds that come into the Residents Council and any funds that are used from the Residents Council, that there's discussion, that it's captured, and that it's accepted by the council. The funds belong to the Residents Council, so Residents Council gets to decide what they do with those funds. Again, how you determine, how you vote on these things, if it's a vote, how you decide how money is spent is going to be up to your individual council. If you have bylaws, refer to those. But you know, a really simple way is opening balance. Hey, our Residents Council has $1,500 as of the end of last month. Anything that's come in since the last meeting, you know, we sold $100 worth of 50/50 tickets. Any expenses that you had, and then the ending statement. If there's any purchases that the council would like to make, you would document that here in the discussion area, and have it accepted and seconded by someone. So this has to be done by residents with residents. So it can't be like Stephanie has accepted the motion to spend $1,500 on new coffee for the Keurig, and seconded by Mel, and here we go. So resident involvement, right? This template is all about encouraging residents to be involved and giving them the opportunity to do so. So
I think Stephen Stephen, you had a comment about your finances?
Yes, if you keep your money in a bank, I would suggest that someone from the council be a signature on any outgoing money via check, and the second signature will be from the administration. So it's a check and balance. The person signing is aware of money that was approved by the council to be spent, and they sign the checks along with the resident assistant. Here they're gonna go one further. We're gonna have two people on the council side sign for it, either, and two on the administration side.
Hmm. That's a good way to do it, Stephen. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that is a good way to ensure that there's somebody there that if, you know, they're out of the building, you still have two signatures. Mhm.
Thanks, Stephen. And you can also attach any receipts or any bank statements or anything like that to the actual minutes, so you have everything in one place.
Mhm.
We have a comment from Bridget, and Bridget, that's the word I was looking for, foundation. So Bridget says that at the home where they're at, they have a foundation, and so the residence council is not permitted to raise funds. So the residence council in the legislation, they have the right to sponsor and plan activities. So if there's a situation in the home where, because there's a foundation, the residence council can't do separate fundraising, they still have the right to plan and sponsor activities. So perhaps working with the foundation, they can determine what that's going to look like. If the foundation is already doing their own fundraising, as I mentioned, perhaps it's a line on the foundation's budget, or perhaps the residence council has the opportunity to approach the foundation and the board of directors and say, you know, we would like to sponsor this activity on behalf of residence council, and working with the foundation, with the board, to figure out how the board can help support that, because it is one of the resident rights and the powers of the council to plan and sponsor activities. In order to do that, they need to have access to funds. But this is a common situation that we're approached with, and our answer is to go back to the board and work with them, speak with them, and see what can be done to help ensure that that resident right, the resident council power, is being supported and implemented in the home. So thank you for bringing that up. And I know there are others on the webinar today who are in a similar type of situation. Having those conversations is always the first step. So thank you for bringing up that situation and for finding the word for me. I couldn't remember foundation. Okay, Mel, over to you.
All right, so committee reports. So there's two types of committees in a long-term care home. There is the long-term care home committees, and then there's the residence council subcommittees. And every home resident council is different. They have different types of subcommittees, and some don't have them, and that's okay too. Some have, you know, welcome committees. They have even just the committee. You can have a committee that after the meeting, they're the ones who read through the minutes and sign off on the minutes. With the long-term care homes committees, those are the organizational structure of the home, and they are required through our legislation. So such as the continuous quality improvement committee, which is led by the employees of the long-term care home, but they have a resident on that committee. So though this committee report would be, you could have both. You would have, you know, someone from your quality committee come and speak about this or give the report. Or you could have someone from your palliative care, your food committee, your ethics committee, and these would be reports from those home committees, as well as a spot for your resident council subcommittee. So if you do have a welcome committee and they wanted to share something or give a report on, I know one home with their welcome committee, they put little baskets together for welcoming new people who are moving into their home. And they'll give a report of how many people have moved in, how many baskets they've made, things like that, so that they're updating what they're doing as a subcommittee. And there's a question asking if the committee reports have to be monthly. And no, these reports do not need to be monthly, because some of those committees don't meet monthly, they meet quarterly. So it really depends on the needs of the committee as well. There might be, you know, maybe every 3 months have a report, maybe once a year only needing a report. It really is kind of as, you know, as needed. So maybe there isn't a report because there's nothing that needs to be reported on. So then they report once it in. So this committee reports can be filled in when needed, quarterly, like I said, or anytime that is needed to be filled in, or it can be left blank if there's nothing to report.
Thanks, Mel. And again, you can attach the minutes from those meetings to these minutes, so you have everything together in one place.
And it's a
Okay.
great point. It's a great way to showcase how your residents are involved in the home. Sometimes your residents are on committee meetings and being involved in certain, you know, home initiative committees, and it might be 1 or 2 residents. So this is a great place for the rest of the residents to know the involvement that you have in the home.
Thanks, Mel. Okay, and this part here, so we're on to 2.5 now, which is the home area update and discussion. So this is the bulk of the meeting in most cases. This section here is an opportunity for residents council participants to receive updates from the home. It could be the resident council assistant who is providing these updates, and that could look something like for nursing and personal care. In this past month, all the nurses and PSWs received their annual training on safe lifts and transfers. It could be updates like that. It could be for spiritual care. We've just hired on a new chaplain, and they'll be starting on this date. You could even invite, if the council approves, you can invite those department heads to come and provide a report. We know some homes do have one manager each month who attends and gives a detailed report about their department. So that's one part of this. It's also the opportunity for residents to bring forward any recommendations for those departments, any concerns that they have, any celebratory comments. So that could look something like, for nutrition and hydration care, we just had New Year's Eve and the dinner was incredible. You know, we didn't think we would have such tasty shrimp. You know, it could be something like that. So congratulations to the chef or to the cook and their team for providing this special meal for us. So celebratory comments are encouraged as well. And in this section, you don't have to stick to these headings. So if in your home, nutrition and hydration care is called something else, you can call it food services, or you can call it whatever name resonates in your home, please do so. You can also add additional rows to this if there's something that is specific to your home. A good way to jog people's memories and to drum up conversation for this section is to describe what each section does. So environmental services, what is that? You can start the conversation by saying, environmental services department, this is the department that's responsible for overseeing laundry, housekeeping, and you can say, you could remind the people in attendance who the manager of that department is, who some of the team members are in that department. You know, is it Frank, who's got the dark hair and glasses, is the manager for this department? You know, you've interacted with him, and jog people's memories a little bit so you have a robust discussion. And this is also the area where, if there are any concerns, they would be captured in this spot. So anything that the council would like the administrator to respond to, this is the spot to get that down. I do know that some residence councils, I believe Stevens as well, has a separate form, so they can take this table out of here and they'll present that to the administrator for the administrator to respond to. So rather than providing the entire package of minutes, they separate out the action, I think they call it an action register. And that it's very clear and easy to see and easy to track what's happening. We'll go back to another screen here now, just because this is such a hot topic. We'll go back to our slide deck here and just look at, oops, right here. So just to give you an example of what this could look like. So if you're having a meeting in March, this was last year, home area updates and discussions. So for administration, an appreciative comment is residents enjoy seeing the administrator out and about during the day, speaking with residents and family members. That's great. Under environmental services, drafty windows were identified in the south dining room. So you don't have to say who or identify who the resident was who brought up the issue in the minutes. You don't have to say that. If that's not the practice in your home, you can simply say what the issue was, where it was identified. And that's how you would track it in the home area update and discussion. The second part to this is the concern response. So at the next meeting, the first one was March, this one's April. At the April meeting, under 2.1 that Mel talked about, here is where you would track what the issue or concern was. So drafty windows identified in south dining room, whether or not a written response was received from the administrator within 10 days. So yes, a response was received, the date that it was received, and what the action was taken. What action was taken based on the response. And now this part here is important to note. And a lot of times we'll hear, well, we'll hear from residents that the council does receive a response within 10 days, but sometimes the response is not what they were looking for, or it's not meaningful, or it's, one line, we'll look into it. And sometimes there can be a feeling that things aren't getting done, or that concerns are not being responded to meaningfully. So then what ends up happening is people stop bringing up those concerns. Your resident council, less and less people attend, and people stop bringing up concerns because there's a feeling that nothing is going to get done anyway. So it's very important to note that even if the residence council receives a response from the administration, the response doesn't have to be accepted or approved by the residence council. So let's break that down a little bit. What does that mean? A response can come in that says, suppose the concern in question was that clothing protectors are really tattered and dingy looking, and the residents would like them to be replaced. Suppose the response is, thank you for bringing this up, but at the moment we don't have the funds to replace the clothing protectors. That's a pretty good response, but the council can say, okay, but we'd like to know more. The council can dig deeper. They can ask the administrator to come and speak with them and let them know where funds are going. Why is it that the clothing protectors can't be replaced? What is the schedule for clothing protector replacement? Is it an annual thing that's done? Are 25% of them replaced each year? What does that look like? Is there an issue with how they're being laundered? Is the laundering process causing them to tatter more easily? When was the last time clothing protectors were purchased? So there's a lot of discussion and engagement that can happen from one simple concern being brought up that wouldn't happen if the response of, well, we can't afford to do that right now, was accepted as is with no further discussion. And this is it's so worth it to do this. It takes time, but it all depends on where you want your time to be spent. So if you invest your time into having these discussions with the residents council and working through these things, you may be saving yourself time responding to complaints and responding to findings later on. Many of the issues that residents councils bring up are signs of bigger problems that, if not addressed when they're brought up by residents who are in the home 24/7, they could lead into develop into something else. So it's worth it to spend time having these discussions. In the example of the clothing protectors that I provided, think about it. If the administrator has already examined all of those areas, so the frequency that they're reordered, the laundering process, when the last time they were ordered was, that if the administrator has already done all of those things, share that with the council so the council knows that, hey, our administrator is really great. They did their due diligence. They've looked into this for us. They really care about what we're bringing up. Awesome. If you haven't, if the administrator hasn't looked into these things, awesome, because now you get to do those things and show that you're taking all the steps that you can to manage this situation. You've just got some great ideas from residents that you can implement and improve the quality in your home. So it's a win-win for everyone. It does take time, and we do recognize that. Some homes will keep this kind of log or table at the front of their resident council binder, and keep the ones that are not resolved up at the top, and then just keep a record of all of the issues that have been brought up. This serves two purposes. If the issues continue to come up, then you can easily identify that right away. You can look at the front of your binder, quickly see that, okay, paint is an issue, or the steamers in the serveries are not working. Something's up, the food's always cold, right? So what's going on there? And it will help you to dig deeper if you haven't already. So lots of different ways that you could work this table and customize it or make it work for your home. I wonder if Stephen has I know you have a really good process for bringing up concerns to your administrator and for receiving feedback on them.
Yes, our motions of concern, when approved by the council, go to the administrator, as well as if it's a specific item, to the manager who's in charge of that. So the administrator signs on that, yes, they've read the concern. The manager puts in what they're going to do, and the administrator reviews it, signs it, sends it back to the chairman, and yes, I have refused to sign. And then I go to the council and I'll say, this is the reason why I don't think this is good enough. And we went through that on one item. It was 4 motions of concern before it got solved.
Thank you, Stephen. That sounds like a really detailed process and easy to keep track of. So thank you for sharing that with us.
I also just wanted to mention too, it's a great way to have tracked how the residents councils have influenced the home as well, and made great changes to the home. So if you are looking, sometimes we always are looking at the concerns and the complaints, and to be able to look back on the last year or two and see how you have influenced your home, how the administration has seen your concerns, made the changes. It's a really great feeling to be able to celebrate that collaboration with your administrator too, and to know that you have that two-way. It may seem like there's a lot of complaints, but the home is doing things, and to be able to see that written down is a good reminder to residents as well.
Thanks, Mel. Okay, so we'll go back to our minute template. I wanted to just bring up a question here from Lisa. If there are concerns that are food related, should they be included in the residents' council concerns or in the food committee minutes if we have a food committee? So that depends on how you do things in your home. Some homes don't have a food committee, and this is their only opportunity to bring those things up. In the home I was working at before, we did have a food committee, and they would take their own minutes, but the food committee took place 15 minutes before the residents council meeting, and I was present at both. I didn't lead the food committee, but I was present. And so I would jot down issues that were brought up at food committee in that section as well.
Hmm.
Stephen, any suggestions? How
Yeah,
do you take the food committee?
the food committee, but generally it's the whole council goes down for the food committee. So when it goes over to the council meeting, if they think it's an issue, it goes into the minutes of the resident council.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, I guess some things can be resolved at the food committee and don't really need to go any further. But if it's something that maybe the home needs to influence, like a whole home approach, sometimes issues with pleasurable dining or the ambiance in the dining room are things that the whole home contributes to. And so it would be important for the administrator to have eyes on that as well, so that it could be brought forward to the whole home. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, and 3.0 is community involvement discussion. So another one of the powers of the Residents' Council in the legislation. So there is a question about, are we basing this minute template on ministry guidelines? And the answer is yes. So what's here is taken from the legislation, from the powers of the Residents' Council. So the ministry does require or mandate, legislate 10 powers of the Residents' Council, in addition to other areas where council needs to be consulted and involved. So all of these are taken from legislation, including community involvement. So one of the powers of the Residents' Council is to be involved in their community and to maintain connections with their community outside of the long-term care home. This can look, this section here is for you to capture that. So some homes, based on their geography or their size, or just, you know, the type of community where the home is located, some homes have a lot of community involvement, others are working on getting more. This could also be a place where you capture, you know, if elections are coming up, and if the home has invited candidates to come in and speak to the residents, if there's a new business opening up in the neighborhood and you'd like to invite residents to come and or you'd like to invite the business owner to come and speak to residents. If there's sometimes homes will do partnerships with daycares or with other religious providers or spiritual care providers in the community who will come in and volunteer. That kind of thing could be captured in community involvement. So it serves two purposes. It's a reminder. I know for myself, every time I would see this community involvement, I think, oh, geez, I really got to do something about community involvement. So it reminded me that this is one of the powers of the Residents' Council, and that we need to do something to ensure that residents stay connected to their communities. And it's, you know, a place to capture the great things that you're already doing. Right.
And so the next one is our Ministry of Long-Term Care Home Quality Inspection Program discussion. So this is something that, you know, is very important when the ministry does come in and do either a proactive inspection, or a, you know, a CI or a complaint has come in to do a reactive inspection. These reports, the public reports, come out, and there is one that will be sent to the home, and it is to the attention of the Residents' Council. And so these are to be given to your council, discussed with your council. And we are hearing that sometimes the homes aren't, or the resident councils aren't knowing about these inspections. We have heard that from a few home resident councils. And so we do really recommend you talk to your administrator when these reports come in. Where are they being sent? Who are they being given to? And to make sure that they do get to your council, that you guys have the opportunity to go over the concerns, to talk about what has gone on in the home, but also what's really important and what is needing to be done legislatively is your action plan. So now what is the home's action plan to rectify, fix, or make sure that whatever was put in that report is not happening again? This is required from the ministry, that these action plans are that are going to be taken by the home are provided to your council as well. And I think this is really an important piece, because sometimes, and before this legislation, it had changed, you didn't need to give them the action plan. But I think this is the more important part of it, because you don't want to hear about just the problem, but you want to hear about what the home is doing to fix it. And so this is a key aspect of it, to really alleviate your concern after you read sometimes these reports. And Stephen, yes.
I also would like to say you should include if the ministry issues compliance orders, they should be presented to the council.
That's right. Absolutely. And so just putting in here what the type is, the discussion and the action plan. So this is the part in your minutes to put that. And then you can attach the report if you'd like to put in the minutes, or have that in your binder. And then the quarterly. So these are quarterly residence council agenda items that are discussed. This is things that don't have to be done at every meeting, but just quarterly. So the first one for 5.1 is your administrator's report and consultation with the council. So this can be any items. Sometimes your administrator might be working on some things that they want to seek advice or update residents. This can be your annual reconciliation report that your administrator has to do, along with the auditor's report that happens yearly. There's a lot of things that kind of happen behind the scenes that the administrator needs to provide with the ministry that they can update the council with. And then also just that two-way conversation and the open conversations is a great way to have them come in quarterly to meet with your council.
Thanks, Mel. And again, that's a requirement for the administrator to meet with the council on a quarterly basis. However, the residence council can request that the administrator attend a meeting to answer questions at any time. By invitation, the administrator can attend meetings, and the administrator can also approach the council and say, hey, I have something to share with you. I would like to be invited to your next meeting. You don't have to wait for those quarterly opportunities. The more times you can interact with residence council and the administrator, the better, to continue building that relationship. So when we did the agenda template overview, we did spend some time talking about these items, so we won't spend too much time on them now. If there are any questions that come in about these, we would happily answer them, but I don't want to spend too much time on this right now. These are just items that need to be talked about on a quarterly basis. And then the annual items under 6.0, the home's financial statement, the detailed allocation of funding report. Those two, that's an annual requirement to be shared. But again, residence council can ask to see those at any time. The home just has to ensure that they share these items with the council at least on an annual basis. And then the resident and family caregiver experience survey. So recently we were made aware of a home who had a proactive inspection, and one of the concerns or a written notification that they received was about the resident and family caregiver experience survey and how there was no documentation. The home wasn't able to provide documentation that the residence council was involved in the process. So it's very important to keep a record of this and to involve the residents in the caregiver experience surveys. So it's, as it says here, it's 3 steps. So residents have the right, or one of their powers is to advise on how the survey will be carried out, of course, to fill in or to receive and fill in the current year's survey, and also to receive the results of the survey and work with the home to talk about how the items that were highlighted in the survey, how they're going to be improved or acted on in the home. So it's very important to involve residents in this process, not just filling out the survey, but also talking about how it's going to be carried out and talking about the results. So something to keep an eye on, make sure that your council is involved in doing those things. Okay, Mel, these are still annual items, so
Annual
over to
items,
you.
yeah. So the resident information package. This is this package. We've been hearing lately that this package is a little bit confusing and people aren't really sure about what this information package is. So when you move into a long-term care home, the home is required to have a ton of information that is legislatively required to give the information as an admission package when you move into the long-term care. And part of that requirement that is legislatively is that the residence council is able to provide information that they would like to have included in that package. So not only is the home required to let new residents know that there is a resident council there, the resident council actually has the right to provide a brochure, maybe an information sheet, or anything that they would like residents to know about their council, or even about what it was like moving in, some information for new residents moving into the home. And then 6.5 is dining and snack review. So this is also legislatively the menu planning that residents council review all menu cycles which align with the home schedule and meals and snack times, so that resident council are to review and review the meal and the snack times. And are they okay with it? Do they have suggestions? Do they have concerns? This is to be reviewed with the council yearly, once a year. And that can be done during your food committee. That can be done during a residence council meeting, however you kind of do your meal planning and your food committees. And then your residence council assistant. So the home is required to appoint a resident council assistant, and this assistant has to be acceptable to the residence council. So it is a two-way collaborative decision. And this every year we suggest, maybe at the beginning of the year or in September or at one point, maybe at one of the times that quarterly when your administrator is in, have your administrator speak to the council about your assistant and ask, are you guys still acceptable in having this assistant be your assistant? And really have it as a conversation with the council and your administrator. And I do recommend not having the assistant in the room at the time so that people can freely talk about, you know, how great they are, or if they do have any concerns, depending on what it is. But that is done on an annually basis, and to have that documented in your minutes. Thank you, Steph.
Well, I'm just going to give everyone a time check. It's currently 2:58. This webinar is supposed to go until 3 p.m. It looks like we have just under 5 minutes of content left. So I want to let everyone know, if you need to leave at 3 p.m., you're most welcome to do so, and you can receive the recording that will be mailed out to you. But we have just under 5 minutes to go, so we'll be slightly over 3 o'clock. Sorry for that. We have a lot of great discussion coming in the question and answer. Okay, so home's mission statement, that's another annual requirement, and that is to review the home's mission statement. Every 5 years, the home needs to update their mission statement, but on an annual, working with residence council to update the mission statement, but on an annual basis, it needs to be reviewed. So it would be important to take note of when the last time the mission statement was updated, and keep that on your agenda so you know when the next time you have to do it is. And for some homes, this might be a company-wide mission statement that's updated, and they will have a process for involving residents in that. But the Residence Council does have it in the legislation. It does require that residence councils be involved in updating the home's mission statement.
And I just want to,
and then
Steph, can I put a plug for our seasons? So in seasons, Huron Lodge partnered with their resident council partnered with their administrator to do their mission statement to update it. And so there's an article in our seasons, our winter seasons about that. So if you want to hear of how another home did it, grab our seasons and read that.
Thanks, Mel. That's great. Can't wait to read that article. And then here we have number 7 is the date for the next meeting. So OARC recommends as a good practice to keep a consistent date and time for your residence council meetings. So some of the most successful residence councils that we work with have the council meetings as a standing meeting. So that looks like every last Tuesday of the month is their residence council at 2 p.m. or every, the first Friday of the month, however it works in your home. But it's important to have a consistent schedule for residence council so the rest of the home knows and can expect when that meeting is taking place. So for starters, residents are busy. Some residents are quite busy, and for their own planning, it's nice to have a set time that they can look forward to and plan their other activities and appointments around residence council. And for the recreation department to know, you don't want to plan a super bingo or a surf and turf special meal during residence council. And also for the home departments, like I said. So if you are a resident council assistant and you're attending a monthly meeting with all of the managers or a weekly meeting with all of the managers, everyone who's present will know or should know, okay, residence council is this week. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to share with the residence council? So it becomes an important part of the home's culture. And if someone has to be absent, if the council assistant is going to be absent, then you can have someone to back up and replace that person so that continuity keeps happening. Mel, when we were discussing this earlier, Mel also brought up that if there's an outbreak or if there's something happening, some reason why the meeting would need to be changed, if it's on a set date, you can make those adjustments and accommodations already. So we find the most successful councils have that set schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And then adjournment, again, this is broken up into a few spots, so you can have multiple residents participating in this, the closing remarks, which we have a template on our website as well. And okay, finally getting to Lisa's question. So Lisa asked, how do others approve minutes prior to the meeting? We usually approve our minutes at the meetings after reading them. So sorry, Lisa, I'm not sure if you mean once the meeting is completed, you approve the minutes right then and there, or if you approve them at the next meeting, whenever that takes place. So because there's a requirement for the administrator to respond to the minutes within 10 days of receiving them, we recommend that the minutes are compiled within 2 or 3 days after the meeting taking place. Everything's fresh in everyone's minds. And the subcommittee approves those minutes before they're actually given to the administrators. So that subcommittee could look like, if you still have traditional leadership roles in your council. So if you have a president or a chair, if you have a secretary, someone on the council or a couple of residents on the council, look at the minutes after they've been typed up, ensure that they're accurate, and then sign off that those are okay to share with the administrator and to post. Mm-hmm. So the reason why there's this date here included is once this date is there, it could be different from when the meeting took place, but it gives you that timeline, because that's what's in the legislation. That's what inspectors are looking for when they come in. They're looking for those timelines. So really important to have those dates accurate and to have those minutes drafted up very shortly after the meeting. So then this last page here is once the minutes that have been approved by your council, a couple of people on your council, once they're approved, you hand them over to the administrator. They sign that they've received them. They date it. That's the date where the 10 days starts. So
Just
that's
Just to
super
make a
important.
couple notes, so that, because I have heard some questions before, is the administrator the one who approves the minutes? And no, the administrator does not approve the minutes. That is your resident council subcommittee, like Stephanie explained. But it is just an acknowledgement that they have gotten the minutes and the start of those 10 days. And it's also not, it's not a written response that is required by the Fixing Long-Term Care Act. It's not to replace that response. It's just the acknowledgement that they got the minutes.
Thanks, Mel. Okay, Lisa, so Lisa did clarify that they approved the minutes at the next meeting. So I would bring that back to your council, bring back these recommendations to your council that the minutes be approved within a couple of days. Most of the time, actually, when residents bring things up at residents council, the items are somewhat time sensitive, not urgent. You know, if there's a report of abuse and neglect or something very serious that could cause harm to anyone in the home, you would want to mention that to your administrator right away and not wait for minutes to be drawn up. That could be a conversation, that could be an email, whatever format works in your home. But waiting from month to month might be too long. So we do recommend that within a couple of days, the minutes are drawn up and approved and brought forward.
There's
Okay.
Sorry, Steph, there's just a question in here asking us to clarify when the administration timeline is. So just the date that the administrator gets the minutes or your concern form. So if you're not giving them the minutes, but you're giving them the concern form, that is when the 10-day timeline starts for your administrator to give that written response back.
Yeah, and it's not 10 business days, it's 10 calendar days. I've been challenged on this in the past. It was during the Christmas holidays. Actually, I had a council meeting that took place and the administrator was off on holidays and wasn't there to respond within the 10 days. So the inspector actually said to me that in the absence of the administrator, there has to be a designate, someone else who will respond to the council. Even if the response is, our administrator is currently on vacation, they are expected back on this date, this letter is to in writing acknowledge that we've received your concerns from the residents council. So it could be something like that, but that timeline is quite strict, those 10 days.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a question about having a checklist of the items with a timeline. I'm not sure exactly what the question is talking about, but I would imagine that it's about all of the requirements of the residents council. So while we don't have a timeline, because it will depend on when your home does things, we do have, if you refer back to the agenda template that we discussed in December or last time, this will tell you everything that is quarterly, everything that's annual, and then depending on timelines that are already established in your home, you can just go in here and say, okay, I'm going to discuss this in June. Or I'm going to talk about this. I know that my detailed allocation of funding goes in at the end of the fiscal year. So I'm going to talk about this in July with residents, maybe, you know, give some time to have that. And this the home's financial statement is from the previous year. If your resident and family experience survey is done every year in September, again, you just go in and type September. Use the agenda as a planning tool so that you can identify when and how you're going to do your things so that you know what's coming up. Another question about 10 days. When I say 10 days, weekends are counted. It's 10 calendar days. This was checked with the ministry, with the inspections department. It is 10 calendar days, including weekends. Long-term care is 24 hours. Residents are there 24 hours, 7 days a week. So no weekends off for anyone who works in recreation or dietary. No weekends off. So 10 calendar days is 10 calendar days. That one was surprising for us too.
Yeah. And we do in the spring, we are going to, like we mentioned in the beginning, talking about the law and understanding the law. And we are going to do another presentation in the spring, just going really more in depth on that and what that looks like. So we can cover a lot more of these legislated, the law outside of the council meeting template as well.
And we have one more question from Tiffany. Tiffany's reaching out from an LDCAP home. And LDCAP homes follow slightly different rules when it comes to residence council. So we are working with another organization on clarifying some of these requirements for LDCAP homes. The question was just confirming that the quarterly and annual agenda items aren't required to be completed in the LDCAP homes. So thank you for your question, Tiffany. I'll have to get back to you on that. I'm not 100% sure, but I do believe you're right that there's different rules that are followed because you're following what the hospital is doing. Thank you for asking that. Okay, so we don't have any other questions in the or comments in the Q&A box. Does anyone have anything for Stephen before we go? Or Stephen, do you have anything for us?
No, I think it's pretty well done.
Thank you. Okay, so we will close then. Right. Here is our contact information. If you're not following us on Facebook or Twitter or X now, I think I'm still going to call it Twitter, but if you haven't followed us yet, please give us a follow on one of these social media accounts. We post updates on there very frequently and would love to engage with you some more on those platforms. So thank you all so much for being here with us today. We hope that this has given you some new information or helped to give you some ideas on how you can improve things in your home, or let you know that you're already doing everything really, really well, and you can keep doing what you're doing. So thank you all so much for being here. We'll see you next month on the second Wednesday of the month for Webinar Wednesdays.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Steph.
Bye now. Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Jen and Melissa.